10 years ago, Kyle's S-rank party exiled him instead of celebrating their achievement. Kyle desperately asks for an explanation, trying to grasp why he's being cast out. His party leader cruelly calls Kyle incompetent, his stats too weak for their S-rank missions. Kyle argues he always handled the dirty work, trying to contribute in his own way. They dismiss his efforts as a nuisance and command him to leave immediately. A decade has passed since that painful moment, and Kyle's life has branched onto a new road. Kyle still ventures alone, his past party's harsh words about his abilities echoing. Now 30, Kyle knows most adventurers decline after 25 and retire by this age. Yet, Kyle just obliterated an S-rank ogre, a beast normally needing a whole party, with one strike. Could his relentless, basic strength training truly be the source of this impossible power? Kyle remembers his early days as a solo adventurer, barely able to complete simple E-rank jobs. Over time, he steadily rose from E-rank to S-rank, now tackling the world's most perilous quests. This surging power feels wrong, pushing Kyle to finally seek a health checkup after years. He braces himself for grim news, incredible strength now, but a drastically shortened future. Kyle enters a clinic in the Rapier Kingdom, steeling himself for his overdue examination. The doctor examines Kyle's results as he anxiously asks if he's cursed or fading away. The doctor reveals Kyle's stats aren't just good, they're astronomically beyond any normal adventurer. He expresses stunned disbelief, saying Kyle's stats are demonic, unlike anything he's ever witnessed. Kyle stares in stunned silence at his sheet. Some numbers reach tens of thousands, his level a mystery. The doctor then places an ordinary adventurer's meager stats beside Kyle's staggering numbers. The doctor asks Kyle if he recalls his skill appraisal ceremony from years ago, having investigated his unusual power. The skill appraisal ceremony at age 15 grants everyone a unique title, like Master Swordsman or Sage. Kyle tries to remember his title from 15 years ago, but the memory is completely gone. The doctor consults public records to finally reveal the unique skill Kyle obtained at his ceremony. Kyle's unique skill is revealed to be the seemingly underwhelming and unknown title, Late Bloomer. The doctor confirms Kyle's unique skill, Late Bloomer, has now awakened, explaining his sudden power surge. This skill gradually raises Kyle's stats by a small amount every single day, building his power unnoticed over many years. The doctor explains that like dust becoming a mountain, Kyle's accumulated power has finally reached an unimaginable peak. With Late Bloomer fully awakened, Kyle has now transcended the limits of ordinary humanity. The next day, Kyle arrives at the Royal Capital's Guild, ready to face his new reality. Kyle selects a B-rank request, confident his newfound power can handle it. Kyle travels into the Royal Capital's forest, still processing the doctor's incredible revelation about his skill. He wishes his Late Bloomer skill had awakened sooner, before his party exiled him. Suddenly, Kyle senses a monster nearby and hears a voice suggest using a buff skill. Two C-rank adventurers, Yui and Elisa, find themselves surrounded by a horde of aggressive goblins. Kyle observes the pair, an archer named Yui and a mage named Elisa, both C-rank adventurers. Yui instructs Elisa to cast a buff, and the mage quickly activates the supportive spell. Kyle notes their coordinated strategy. One focuses on support buffs, while the other unleashes attacks. While their coordination is decent, Kyle realizes this tactic is ill-suited against such a large group of monsters. Just as Kyle predicted, the two adventurers find themselves cornered and overwhelmed by the goblin horde. Kyle sees the two adventurers trapped by goblins and knows he has to step in. He rushes forward, yelling for Yui and Elisa to get clear of his attack. A massive blast explodes from Kyle's landing, instantly wiping out the goblins. Goblins scatter outwards as Yui and Elisa instinctively cover themselves from the blast, while Kyle stands still in the settling dust. Kyle turns to the adventurers, wondering if he just ruined the mission by killing all the monsters. Yui assures him it was a culling request, perfectly fine, and starts to thank him. Suddenly, Yui gasps, recognizing Kyle and calling his name in shock. Yui and Elisa excitedly recognize Kyle as the famous S-rank solo adventurer, baffling him. Kyle remembers his past, realizing his solo status came from fear of loss, not his own will. The two adventurers continue their excited talk, oblivious to Kyle's inner turmoil. Yui and Elisa declare themselves his fans, calling it a dream to meet him. Kyle just stares, completely taken aback by their sudden adoration. Later, the three walk through the lively streets of a medieval town. The young adventurers reveal their big dream. They both want to become heroes, no matter how hard it is. They talk about their ambitions, believing bigger dreams make life more exciting. Kyle thinks about the title hero, a rank needing royal approval, and used for centuries. Yui admits they lack strong skills, remembering their recent near defeat by goblins. Elisa, however, smiles confidently, insisting becoming a hero is still their ultimate goal. Kyle is touched by their sincerity, feeling a real urge to help them achieve their goal. Then Yui looks up at Kyle and boldly asks him to join their party. A hulking demon bursts into the Royal Capital's guild, demanding money from the terrified staff as Kyle watches. Yui and Elisa immediately recognize the intruder as an S-rank demon, understanding the extreme danger. This demon demands money for a rumored major offensive, threatening to kill anyone who disobeys. Kyle resolves to intervene, knowing he must stop the demon's rampage. Kyle steps forward and calmly tells the demon to cease its destructive actions. The demon roars at Kyle, demanding his identity, but Kyle simply confirms he knows it's a demon. Kyle warns the demon that no money is available, urging it to leave to avoid unnecessary harm. The demon sneers, mocking Kyle's perceived weakness and questioning his ability to harm it. Kyle challenges the demon to attack, reminding it not to damage the guild in the process. Kyle tightens his grip, insisting they should de-escalate to avoid wrecking the guild. Kyle's fist connects powerfully with the S-rank demon's face, sending a shockwave through the hall. The demon screams, blasted backward and tearing through the guild's wooden framework in a violent explosion. Kyle surveys the sudden destruction, realizing he misjudged his strength and apologizing for the damage. Onlookers in the guild stare in disbelief. Kyle knocked out the S-rank demon with a single punch. Guild members erupt in cheers, praising Kyle as their strongest and most reliable hero. Amidst the rubble, the defeated demon lies barely conscious, twitching from Kyle's overwhelming blow. The demon coughs, struggling to rise, swearing vengeance against humans for its humiliating defeat. The demon jolts, catching Kyle's intense glare, and vows to remember this painful encounter. With sudden flash, the demon vanishes using teleportation magic, leaving Kyle to ponder its escape. Yui and Elisa stare wide-eyed, stunned by the overwhelming display of Kyle's power. Guild members surround Kyle, praising his incredible power after he defeated an S-rank demon with one blow. Kyle brings up their earlier offer and asks for companions, proposing he join their party. Yui and Elisa cry out in pure excitement at the thought of Kyle joining their adventuring team. Kyle wonders if they really want an old man like him, but the surrounding guild members quickly dismiss his worries. Yui and Elisa beam, happily welcoming Kyle to their party and reintroducing themselves. Kyle stands with his new companions, Yui and Elisa, as they officially welcome him to their party, proof of heroes. The adventure of Kyle, the late-blooming middle-aged adventurer, officially begins as they set out. The party, Proof of Heroes, accepts a new guild request, a bounty specifically targeting Kyle, issued by Count Lydon. Elisa asks if this is their first long-distance request, and Yui confirms they usually stay near the capital. The Proof of Heroes party travels by carriage, heading deep into Count Lydon's territory for their new mission. Yui explains that completing this noble's request will promote their C-rank party to B-rank. The guild acknowledges that noble requests are important and achievements like this warrant a rank promotion. Elisa excitedly declares this mission their big chance, while Kyle remains lost in thought. Kyle reminds them that while excitement is good, they must also fight, as he cannot handle everything himself. Kyle asks about their travel time, learning they will reach Count Lydon's territory in about 2 days by carriage. Kyle then questions Yui and Elisa about their funds, reminding them they will need to stay at inns. Yui explains all their travel and lodging expenses will be covered by the quest's reward money. Elisa and Yui reveal they spend all their earnings immediately, never keeping money overnight. Kyle, who has saved diligently since his youth, contrasts their spending habits with his own. Kyle agrees to cover all inn and meal costs, demanding they work hard in return. As the carriage doors close, a familiar warmth washes over Kyle, a feeling long absent. He remembers the easy camaraderie with his first companions, even when he ranked low. But soon their strength surged, leaving him in the dust. His own weakness had ultimately led to his expulsion from that very party, a fact Elisa now senses. Kyle offers a gentle smile, telling Elisa he's just recalling old friends. Elisa understands, recognizing he speaks of the party from a decade ago. Both Elisa and Yui are surprised to learn just how well-known Kyle is. Elisa then shares a startling tidbit she'd overheard. His old party eventually fell apart. Kyle stares in disbelief as Elisa reveals the guild's report that they couldn't function without him. He's confused, recalling how his old party seemed to flourish after he was gone. Elisa insists the guild's records clearly state his absence was the cause of their downfall. Yui urges Kyle to look ahead, but the news still weighs on his mind. With a renewed sense of purpose, Kyle and his companions eagerly begin their 2-day carriage ride. On the second day, a familiar ache seizes Kyle's back from the relentless jolting. Elisa and Yui immediately notice his discomfort, their concern evident. Kyle admits that even his considerable strength can't entirely erase the strain of prolonged travel. Elisa realizes they've just crossed into Count Lyaton's domain, a fact Yui quickly confirms. Suddenly, the carriage lurches violently, nearly unseating the two women. The driver calls out that a monster has appeared at the gate, blocking their entry. Elisa and Yui exchange worried glances as Kyle's expression hardens with grim determination. Kyle rises, a confident smile gracing his lips, declaring this their moment to act. They advance toward the imposing, fortified gate marking Count Lyaton's territory. Two guards desperately hold their ground against an unseen enemy as a monstrous snout appears from the darkness. A pack of B-rank ogres snarls, their hulking forms completely blocking the entrance. Kyle surveys the chaotic scene from afar, calmly tallying 5 ogres. He considers the obstacle, musing that these 5 might prove a worthy test for their new party. Kyle turns to his companions, asking about their unique skills before they charge into the fray. Yui steps forward, proudly proclaiming herself a mage adept at wielding potent magic. Elisa then introduces herself as an archer, boasting unparalleled accuracy with her bow and arrows. Kyle explains that understanding their individual strengths helps him strategize their combined assault. With a determined look, Kyle faces his new allies and asks if they are truly prepared. The beleaguered guards caution that these ogres are B-rank, a daunting challenge for their C-rank party. Kyle challenges their fear, reminding them of their shared ambition to become true heroes. Yui admits heroism is a dream, but she and Elisa resolve not to be intimidated. Kyle assures them it's achievable. With courage reignited, Yui and Elisa eagerly cry out their readiness to fight. Yui grips her staff and Elisa knocks an arrow, both poised for the looming confrontation. Yui retrieves her wooden staff from an unseen dimension, earning a nod from Kyle. Elisa draws her bowstring taut, requesting a body-strengthening spell for her coming shot. Kyle observes their positioning as Elisa prepares support buffs, while Yui readies her weapon. Enhancement magic flares brightly as Yui commands her arrow to seek its target. Energized arrows tear through the air, smashing into the charging beast horde. These arrows carry their own magical charge, not relying on external spells. Their unpolished coordination still manages to keep the monsters at bay for now. Their low guild rank hides a much higher combat potential. Elisa unleashes a swirling spell, bending the guild regulations to their limits. Sealing flames engulf 3 beasts, leaving the others open for the next attack. 2 more monsters burst through the trees, and Kyle shouts a warning. Massive, tusked boars roar into the clearing, catching Yui and Elisa by surprise. The girls raise their weapons, bracing back-to-back as the beasts charge. Elisa's arrows find their mark, but the beasts push forward unfazed. Kyle throws himself into the path of the charging monsters, shielding his friends. A single, devastating punch from Kyle sends both massive beasts soaring. As the dust settles, Yui and Elisa stare in awe at his raw power. Kyle leads the group back toward the city gates, pleased with their first test. He praises their bravery against foes far stronger than their rank suggests. Now the real training begins, learning to fuse their magic to survive. Yui prepares to cast both offensive and support magic in a single, simultaneous move. Kyle backs the strategy to maximize their power, but Yui's back gives out. Back near the city gates, Kyle asks Elisa for a swift healing spell. Just beyond the city, a winding dirt path leads directly to Count Lyaton's mansion. Count Lyaton's enormous white stone estate towers before the 3 adventurers. A maid in a sharp suit opens the grand double doors to welcome them inside. The quiet maid leads the group up the mansion's magnificent carpeted staircase. Kyle stares at huge oil paintings of a bald, muscular man posing in his underwear. Count Lyaton himself bursts into a bodybuilder pose, demanding a report on their muscle condition. Elisa quickly covers Yui's eyes as Kyle freezes before the bizarre, near-naked noble. Kyle apologizes for the noble's behavior, keeping the girls shielded from the flashing display. Count Lyaton flexes his oiled chest under a shower of glittering imaginary sparkles. Kyle dryly points out that screaming bodybuilder poses do not qualify as magic. Even the personal maid mutters an apology for her employer's endless muscle chants. The Count's playful demeanor vanishes as he locks his gaze onto the adventurer. Lyaton lunges forward and aggressively squeezes Kyle's shoulders to measure his build. The massive noble instantly slumps forward, sighing with heavy disappointment. Light unpokes Kyle's chest, declaring him far too skinny to be the rumored monster slayer. Kyle quickly changes the subject to the guild request, escaping further physical inspection. Shadows fall across Liaton's face as he demands a strange favor before revealing the mission. Lighton strikes a towering pose and demands Kyle fight him right here and now. Kyle's party accepts a monster subjugation request and arrives at Count Liaton's massive estate. Kyle steps onto the estate grounds and discovers a huge combat arena built right outside. Light unlocks his eyes onto Kyle, preparing to initiate the duel. Mate signals the start, and Light vanishes in a blur of motion. Liaton's immense fist smashes into Kyle's gut like a runaway train. Kyle looks down, astonished to find himself perfectly unharmed. His status screen displays an unbelievable defense stat exceeding 12,000. Liaton pulls his arm back, gathering his full physical strength for another blow. The giant noble seizes Kyle's hands, locking him in a grueling test of pure might. Veins bulge on Liaton's straining arms as he prepares to crush Kyle with his absolute power. Liaton drives all his physical force into the grip, yet Kyle does not budge an inch. Sweat streams down the noble's face as his ultimate strength fails to budge the adventurer. Kyle calmly asks if it's his turn, breaks the hold, and throws a devastating counter. That single punch sends the massive count smashing through the stone wall in a storm of dust. A booming laugh erupts from the broken wall as the count marvels at the adventurer's power. Liaton steps from the rubble, formally conceding his defeat to the legendary slayer. The giant stands utterly uninjured, having completely tanked Kyle's full-force punch. Suddenly energized, the Count pivots the talk directly to the guild's official quest. A ferocious beast has seized the main mine in the Count's northern lands. This ravenous creature devours their precious resources, but what lurks in the deep mine? The group reaches the northern mine, its entrance marked by vast caverns in the rock. Countless dark tunnels honeycomb the cliff face, resembling a colossal hornet's nest. The desolate quarry lies eerily silent, the beast nowhere to be seen. The fearsome beast hunts only at night, sleeping deep within the stone. Liaton steps forward and slams his massive fist into the cracked bedrock. Heat rises from the noble's smoking knuckles as vibrations ripple through the earth. A violent tremor rattles the quarry floor, knocking the adventurers off balance. Kyle shouts a warning for the group to retreat as the shaking intensifies. Even the boastful noble backs away, leaving this massive target to the legendary slayer. Two glowing eyes ignite in the darkness as a 15-meter titan begins to emerge. An A-rank giant worm bursts from the subterranean depths, bearing razor-sharp teeth. The massive creature dwarfs the surrounding treeline, casting a shadow over the two adventurers. Liaton nudges Kyle to step forward and slay the colossal threat himself. Kyle studies the squirming titan, calculating the beast's movements and weaknesses. Kyle turns and offers the hunt to Elisa and Yui instead. Liaton breaks into a cold sweat as the giant worm thrashes behind them. Both girls shrink back, comparing this nightmare to the simple orcs they'd barely defeated. An A-rank beast normally demands a high-level party, a suicidal matchup for two C-ranks. Kyle points to their recent combat performance as proof this target is within reach. He challenges them to overcome this trial and spark their own growth. Kyle and Liaton stand in the forest, watching the battle unfold from the tree line. Elisa activates an enhancement spell while Yui draws her bowstring tight. Yui releases her arrow, sending a streak of steel toward the lunging monster. The arrow sparks harmlessly off the monster's thick hide as the beast rises back up. A heavy counterstrike from the giant worm slams both girls hard onto the dirt. With their attacks failing, the two young adventurers scramble backward across the rocky quarry. Kyle refuses to step in, instead shouting reminders of their past combat tactics. The giant worm lunges once more, giving the girls only seconds to formulate a plan. Liaton groans in frustration while Kyle keeps his arms crossed, waiting for their move. Liaton charges forward to intervene, just as the gaping maw of death closes in on Yui. Liaton physically intercepts the massive beast, locking his bare hands against its razor-sharp teeth. Veins bulge on the veteran's bald head as the crushing weight of the worm pushes back. Liaton shouts for the girls to flee while he anchors the monster in place. Instead of running, Elisa turns to Yui with a plan born from Kyle's earlier training. During their previous battle, Kyle warned them that dividing their roles only limits their true potential. Both girls possess the rare ability to simultaneously cast offensive spells and supportive enhancements. A shared nod seals their decision as they prepare to combine their magical energies. Light erupts around the two adventurers as they trigger their enhancement spells in unison. Elisa channels her mana outward, guiding her partner to sync with the rising magical frequency. Yui matches the rhythm perfectly, preparing to unleash a combined power that will decide their fate. Lighton anchors his boots into the dirt, urging his master to retreat from the danger zone. Behind him, Elisa and Yui stand side by side as a dual aura of magical energy flares to life. In perfect unison, the two young adventurers release their combined magical offensive directly at the monster. A steel arrow ignites, streaking through the air like a fiery comet. The enchanted arrow strikes the worm's armor, cracking its impenetrable hide in a brilliant flash. Yui prepares another shot, calling for Elisa to unleash all her remaining mana. The wounded monster shrieks, thrashing its massive body for a desperate counterattack. Elisa channels her magic to its absolute limit, aiming for the legendary title of hero. Lighton watches the spectacle as a rare smile finally crosses Kyle's face from the sidelines. The giant worm crashes onto the quarry floor, leaving Kyle standing amidst the rising smoke. The veteran adventurer witnesses the impossible victory of his young students firsthand. At their age, even Kyle lacked the power to fell such a beast. Completely drained of mana, the exhausted girls lean on each other in victory. Elisa immediately offers her gratitude to Lighton for holding the front line. Tears stream down the massive warrior's face at their display of respect. A sudden booming shout from the giant veteran catches Elisa completely off guard. The muscular giant sweeps both exhausted girls into a crushing, sweaty embrace. The girls shriek in protest, unaware of the new dangers lurking just ahead. A few days before the battle, a dark conspiracy takes shape within a hidden laboratory. The bandaged demon, beaten by Kyle, demands a counterstrike from his sinister companion. An ancient spellcaster cackles, ready to weave a curse using the remnants of battle. She prepares to siphon the residual magic lingering inside the beaten demon's wounds. The witch demands the target's name to bind the lethal spell to its victim. The scarred demon narrows his eyes, ready to utter his conqueror's name. As Kyle's name is spoken, his carriage rolls peacefully back across a stone bridge. Suddenly, a sharp spasm locks Kyle's spine, forcing him to double over in agony. The toll of the recent battle catches up, completely throwing out the veteran's back. His young students watch in sheer silence as the legendary hero grovels on the floor. Elisa refuses to let her mentor suffer and prepares her healing magic to mend his broken posture. Yui stands tall beside her partner because a simple back spasm can never lessen Kyle's incredible achievements. A soft smile breaks through Kyle's grimace as he quietly accepts the kindness of his young pupils. The warmth fades instantly when Yui orders the carriage to head straight toward the nearest hospital. From his hunched position on the floor, Kyle weakly protests the need for any professional medical attention. Kyle cowers as his childish aversion to doctors earns him a harsh scolding from both of his students. Cold sweat pours down Kyle's face under the relentless pressure of their synchronized shouting. Yui puffs out her chest and glares, completely shutting down any further arguments with sheer intimidation. Defeated by a teenager's stance, the legendary adventurer offers a meek apology while the carriage rolls along. The carriage enters the bustling royal capital, completely unaware that a dark curse already tracks their every move. The carriage stops outside a quiet clinic nestled in the heart of the capital. Inside, agonizing screams echo through the halls as the doctor violently snaps Kyle's spine back into place. With a final pull, the pressure vanishes and Kyle sits up completely free of pain. Yui smugly reminds her mentor of his stubbornness, while the mysterious doctor chuckles in the corner. Adjusting his sunglasses, the physician boasts of his flawless medical skills to his skeptical new patients. Kyle fastens his collar, his legendary pride stung by the simple fact that the treatment worked. The doctor sighs at the veteran's faint gratitude, his own thoughts remaining a mystery. He turns away with a casual warning that Kyle is already on his deathbed. A shadow falls over Kyle's face as the diagnosis gives him precisely 1 week to live. Kyle grabs the doctor by his collar, demanding if this grim sentence is some sick joke. Kyle's rage bounces right off the doctor, who casually asks about his two companions. Yui steps forward, ready to share the story of their first meeting. The doctor cuts her off, pointing out that death only claims those who fail to break the curse. He leans back and asks if Kyle recently crossed paths with an angry demon. The dark magic wrapped around Kyle's body carries a distinct, non-human wavelength. The three travelers stand frozen, searching their memories for a demonic encounter. A memory flashes of a savage beast taking a heavy fist straight to the jaw. The girls immediately suggest a trip to the local church to wash the curse away. But the doctor's cold, serious voice halts their optimistic plans. This demonic hex would kill a normal man instantly, leaving Kyle with no easy escape. Only a true master of the holy arts stands any chance of breaking this lethal curse. The requirement hangs heavily as Kyle weighs the names of the realm's high priests. Finding a master healer in just 7 days remains a nearly impossible task. With a morbid grin, the doctor promises to prepare a comfortable bed for Kyle's final hours. Leaving the clinic behind, the companions make their way to the bustling city guild hall. Instead of grim news, the receptionist announces their immediate promotion to B-rank adventurers. Their victory against Count Ryotan's beast officially elevates the party into the elite tiers. The girls jump and cheer, celebrating the massive milestone they achieved together. Yui suddenly stops her cheers, remembering that their mentor has only 1 week left to live. But Kyle smiles and tells them to celebrate, already harboring a secret plan to cheat death. Kyle turns back to the counter, shifting the conversation from their recent promotion to a new agenda. He requests any open missions issued directly by the Rapier Kingdom's royal court. The receptionist hesitates, gripping her ledger tightly as she stares up at the veteran adventurer. A royal court request carries an S-rank classification, prompting shouts of alarm from his companions. The new B-rank party rating limits the girls, but Kyle holds a solo S-rank license. Kyle turns to his companions, offering them a choice to join him on this lethal endeavor. He extends an invitation to bring them along under his personal protection. Yet S-rank threats bring extreme danger, and Kyle refuses to drag them into his personal fight. The massive gap in their ranks threatens to shatter the celebratory mood of their hard-earned promotion. But the girls shout their defiance in unison, locking themselves into a deadly quest to save their mentor. Elisa and Yui reject Kyle's solo path, cementing their place by his side. Their stubborn loyalty leaves Kyle speechless as they pump their fists in unison. He turns back to the receptionist to finalize the dangerous S-rank contract. A cure for the lethal curse lies hidden within the walls of the royal court. Only one master of the holy arts possesses the power to purify Kyle's failing body. Saint Larucia sips her tea, the clock relentlessly ticking down on Kyle's fading life. Completing this S-rank mission grants them a royal audience, their sole hope for her sacred aid. The party departs the city, their boots hitting the dusty path of their arduous journey. Their destination looms, the legendary, bone-chilling graveyard of heroic spirits. The carriage road vanishes, forcing them into a dark forest teeming with ancient dangers. A new guide is assigned by the guild to lead Kyle and his companions through the woods. Lumen effortlessly navigates the dense forest, her terrain grasp skill proving invaluable. Her natural talent shines, and the party recognizes the immense utility of her specialized gift. Lumen confidently declares she never loses her way, even in the most foreign lands. Despite her navigation skills, Lumen confesses her lack of combatability makes her a liability. Kyle offers understanding, connecting her burden to his own past experiences with menial work. The girls confess they too often feel like a drain on Kyle's strength. They vow to train relentlessly, determined to become more capable allies for future fights. The girls shower Kyle with admiration, marveling at the true scope of his incredible power. Kyle absorbs their effusive praise, wondering if their adoration has perhaps gone too far. Lumen finally leads the party to the entrance of the foreboding graveyard of heroic spirits. They stand before silent rows of stone, marking the final resting place of countless legends. The crushing weight of the ancient burial ground descends upon the small adventuring party. Yui draws closer to Kyle, seeking reassurance amidst the shadows of the forgotten dead. She timidly asks if there's anything more she can do to help with their vital mission. Kyle gently declines, warning that the path ahead is far too dangerous. Yui bows her head, clearly disheartened by her present inability to help. Kyle flails in panic, desperately trying to reassure her that her growth is important. Suddenly, a sharp cry tears through the air, silencing their moment. Kyle whips his head toward the darkness as an unseen force lunges from the trees. An unseen force slams into Kyle, sending him tumbling into the shadows. Kyle hits the dirt hard, his body absorbing the brutal impact of the ambush. He struggles to regain his senses as the reality of the surprise assault dawns. Kyle scans the shadows, desperate to identify the source of the lethal, unseen attack. The party huddles behind a shimmering barrier, barely surviving the devastating first strike. The girls stare at the scroll detailing the S-rank quest to eliminate a high-ranking demon. Giant descends from the darkness, hovering effortlessly as the forest's true nightmare arrives. The unseen blow rips Kyle from his feet and hurls him into the black tree-line. He slams into the earth, the ambush driving the breath completely out of him. The graveyard of heroic spirits looms, a silent expanse marking the resting place of legends. Yui bows her head, utterly overwhelmed by her inability to contribute to the fight. Elisa snaps at Yui to keep her eyes forward as their barrier struggles to hold. Yui looks to Lumen, but the mage only offers a sharp, impatient click of her tongue. The forest shadows writhe, concealing the predator that just shattered the party's guard. A voice drifts from above, mocking the fragility of mortals who break so easily. The attacker examines her blood-stained fingers after the brutal strike. Giant descends from above, a wide grin spreading as she sees the broken adventurer. A grinning demon appears, introducing herself as a powerful executive of the Demon Lord's army. Ka lunges, but Giant effortlessly deflects his sword with a mere flick of her wrist. The demon complains mockingly that this human is far too resilient to kill in one blow. Kyle checks on his companions, asking if Elisa and Yui managed to escape unharmed. Elisa cries out for Kyle, desperately pointing toward the vanished mage, Lumen. Kyle curses his own carelessness, admitting his failure to keep the party safe. Giant tilts her head, truly perplexed by the adventurer's deep bond with a single life. The demon turns her gaze towards the forest where the rest of the party remains hidden. She prepares to strike again, her terrifying presence overwhelming the trembling group. Her hand glows with deadly energy as the remaining adventurer's fate hangs precariously. Giant scoffs, stating human lives are easily forgotten and replaced. The demon laughs at the party, mocking how quickly they crumble before death. Elisa demands to know why the demon has trapped them in this forgotten, desolate place. Giant dismisses the question with a casual wave, unconcerned with their plight. She admits her mission is a tiresome task, juggling orders and her own twisted desires. Giant suggests the survivors embrace their fate, just like their comrade who already fell. She leaps from the trees, soaring towards the archers with predatory, deadly intent. The archers draw their bows, bracing for the impact as they prepare their counterattack. Giant deflects their arrows with casual ease, utterly bored by their feeble efforts. The archers refuse to yield, drawing their strings taut for one last, desperate shot. The archers cry out for a volley, hoping to shatter the demon's defenses. Giant flicks away the incoming projectiles, mocking their pathetic resistance. A massive, glowing magic circle ignites in the sky, sealing the party's fate. The adventurers gaze up at the shimmering seal, frozen by the immense power. Giant grins, taunting them as she prepares to unleash unavoidable destruction. Beams of pure, condensed energy cascade from the circle, tearing the forest floor apart. Elisa and her companion huddle behind a barrier, struggling to hold back the barrage. Giant descends, demanding they cease their futile struggle and accept their end. The demon laughs, her jagged teeth bared as she prepares to crush them into dust. Kyle suddenly appears, intercepting her strike to shield his party with his body. Giant recoils, stunned that the human archers landed several direct hits. Kyle stands firm, brushing off the minor damage as if it were insignificant. The party stares at Kyle, questioning if he is truly human after such a feat. Kyle dismisses their awe, claiming he is just an ordinary middle-aged adventurer. Giant scoffs at the impossibility, refusing to believe what she is witnessing. The demon lunges forward, intent on crushing the man who dared to defy her. Counters the assault, but the demon's crystalline shards strike him with brutal force. A sudden slash tears through the air, catching Giant off guard and drawing blood. The archers watch in breathless silence as Kyle drives the demon back with flawless, relentless strikes. Giant shrieks in pure agony as the tide of battle turns against her in a single heartbeat. She spits out a venomous stream of insults, her composure completely shattered by his brutal counteroffensive. Kyle lunges forward like a blur, erasing the distance before the demon can even raise her guard. Pivoting on his heel, he channels his full momentum into a devastating, inescapable strike. The sheer force of his blade tears through the forest air, leaving Giant reeling and utterly defenseless. A blinding shockwave of raw energy erupts, completely swallowing the battlefield in light. Kyle watches the dust settle with an unblinking gaze, his eyes locked onto his shattered opponent. Giant collapses against a massive tree, her body broken and her monstrous pride utterly crushed. She chokes on her own blood, spitting curses at the bitter impossibility of losing to mere humans. Kyle steps forward into the clearing, looking down at her with a cold, final question. Giant sneers through a jagged, bloody grin, refusing to give him the satisfaction of an answer. The demon dissolves into ash, her final, mocking whispers promising a bloodbath in the next life. A blood-stained cloth is passed between trembling hands, a heavy, silent memory of their fallen friend. Kyle lowers his head, the unbearable weight of the loss etched deep into his exhausted face. Every adventurer knows the harsh truth that death is always waiting just around the next corner. They stand in silence before the simple marker, where the name Lumen lies under the vast, empty sky. The companions slowly turn away from the grave, leaving their friend to rest in the quiet forest earth. Though her journey ended here, the bright spark of her ambition leaves them wondering what the future holds. Now, the party enters the Grand Royal Court to report their hard-won victory and cleanse the demon's lingering curse. The party marches toward the throne to finally present the fruits of their grueling quest. King Greyford offers a formal nod, welcoming the three adventurers into his inner sanctum. The king towers over his guests from the throne, his authority radiating through the ornate chamber. A masked woman watches from the shadows, her figure concealed by heavy velvet curtains. Cal stops in his tracks, locking eyes with the hidden observer as she lingers in the gloom. The mysterious woman lets out a soft, mocking laugh while her elegant mask obscures her face. King Greyford speaks Kyle's name aloud, leaving the veteran warrior reeling from the sudden recognition. Kyle fumbles for words as the king admits to tracking his combat progress from afar. His companions cheer for his newfound prestige, blind to the heavy political implications behind the king's words. The king reveals he previously contacted the guild to formally grant Kyle the title of hero. Elisa demands to know why Kyle kept such a monumental opportunity hidden from his teammates. Yui reminds him that attaining the rank of hero has always been their shared dream. Kyle waves off the memory, insisting he honestly believed the initial offer was nothing more than a prank. The king voices his appreciation for Kyle's lack of interest in seeking fame or status. King Greyford insists on bestowing the title immediately, blindsiding the veteran adventurer yet again. Kyle hesitates, gently urging the king to postpone the official ceremony for the time being. The king officially commends the trio for their success in subjugating the demon army executive. He credits their tactical strength for the countless lives spared across the kingdom. Elisa shifts the momentum, eagerly requesting a personal favor from the royal saint. Cole tries to smooth over the sudden tension, but his voice catches in his throat. King Greyford studies the lethal curse within Kyle with a chilling, analytical precision. A masked woman steps from the darkness, her taunting laughter filling the quiet chamber. Larusha, the saint of the Rapier Kingdom, finally unmasks herself to reveal her identity. Kyle and his companions watch, captivated by the saint's sudden, luminous presence. Larusha moves close, pressing against Kyle as she intently probes his physical state. She claims she can cleanse the demonic curse and orders Kyle to shut his eyes. Without a word of warning, Larusha presses her lips to his in front of his shocked party. Kyle remains rooted to the spot, completely bewildered as the saint clings to him. Elisa and Yui break into a frantic, panicked outburst over the saint's shocking display. Larusha pulls away, lightheartedly declaring that the demonic curse is now gone. Elisa and Yui immediately demand to know if that kiss was a necessary medical treatment. Larusha coyly remarks that she just found him attractive, sparking immediate outrage from the group. The chamber descends into chaos as the party erupts, startling the king on his throne. Kyle stammers a hurried apology, desperately trying to regain some royal decorum. King Greyford dismisses the commotion and formally asks Kyle to lead the hunt against the demon army. Kyle and his friends acknowledge they have already heard the alarming reports of demon activity. The king explains that his scouts are still searching for answers, leaving the situation shrouded in mystery. The monarch asks if Kyle is prepared to take on these perilous missions as they emerge. Elisa and Yui trade a sharp look while Kyle offers a small, weary smile. The trio accepts the king's dangerous task, their expressions hardening with resolve. King Greyford fixes his gaze on them, demanding absolute victory regardless of the cost. Kyle and his party return to the bustling guild to gear up for the road ahead. The royal capital's guild hall rises high above the city as the beating heart for every adventurer. Kyle approaches the front desk, only for the receptionist to stumble back in visible shock. She blurts out her sheer disbelief that Kyle actually survived his latest death-defying mission. Kyle stands in stunned silence as he realizes the entire guild staff had been betting on his demise. Elisa and Yui gather their substantial rewards while the surrounding crowd mourns their lost wagers. Kyle confronts the staff over their cold behavior, yet the receptionist remains completely unapologetic. A local doctor steps forward, confessing he also placed a bet on Kyle's eventual failure. The receptionist looks up, struggling to believe that the local doctor is standing right there in the guild. Elisa and Yui nudge Kyle to wrap up the conversation so they can finally get a meal. They focus entirely on the prospect of a feast, unaware of the heavy tension permeating the room. Kyle sternly reminds his companions that reckless spending is a luxury they cannot afford. The receptionist asks if they are truly ready to take on another perilous assignment. Kyle reveals that the doctor personally approached them with a request earlier that same day. The contract requires them to hunt a unique ogre deep in the forest that possesses immense physical resistance. The doctor points toward the woods bordering Count Ryotan's territory as the creature's current haunt. He warns them that this specific ogre likely acts as an agent for the Demon Lord's expanding army. The party falls into a chilling silence as the terrifying scale of the threat finally sinks in. The doctor emphasizes that they cannot afford to ignore a danger of this magnitude. Elisa wonders aloud why a humble doctor is distributing dangerous subjugation requests. The doctor keeps his cryptic smile, offering nothing but vague reassurances in return. He poses as a man of mystery, dangling a tempting reward to secure their compliance. The party eyes him with growing suspicion, questioning the true intent behind his offer. He shifts the tone entirely, jokingly suggesting a free medical consultation as a bonus incentive. The doctor vows to provide his professional services if they agree to handle this mission. He promises to use his unique condition search skill to pin down the target's exact location. Kyle hesitates, clearly drawn to the tactical advantage of such a rare tracking ability. The doctor explains that he can trace any entity as long as he has a single piece of evidence. He warns that his ability is powerful, though lack of detail often leads to frustrating misfires. Tracking common forest goblins proves useless, as his skill returns far too many scattered results. Kyle realizes the ogre's precise location came directly from this man's mysterious tracking talent. Kyle challenges the doctor on his medical expertise, noting his complete lack of healing skills. The doctor lets out a dry chuckle, teasing that he sounds like he is being accused of malpractice. He gestures toward his cluttered shelves, claiming royal credentials and hard work authorize his clinic. Kyle shuts down the deflection, unimpressed by the banter and desperate for the truth. The doctor grins, brazenly claiming he is simply a genius who has everything accounted for. Kyle considers the ogre's legendary physical resistance, questioning if his blade can even cut through. Their carriage rolls toward the horizon, ferrying the party into a battle that seems impossible to survive. Larusha watches Kyle closely, sensing the exhaustion taking a toll on his body. Kyle flexes his muscles, adamant that his strength remains his greatest weapon despite the fatigue. Larusha ignores his bravado and asks point-blank about the pain in his back. Kyle offers a strained smile, insisting he feels perfectly fine for the road ahead. Elisa reveals that she and Larusha have already mapped out a strategy to ease his burden. They decide to take turns offering him a lap pillow to help him recover. They justify the intimacy as a necessity, pointing to the lingering curse weighing him down. Larusha abruptly shifts gears, noting that their recent kiss makes this arrangement rather complicated. Kyle stammers as they lean in, clearly testing the boundaries of their relationship. The carriage continues its steady rhythm, leaving Kyle cornered in a situation he cannot avoid. Kyle confesses that the lap pillow actually provides real relief for his aching spine. His focus shifts entirely as his view is suddenly blocked by his companion's presence. Kyle struggles to quiet his mind, chiding himself for fixating on the suggestiveness of the moment. He tries to silence his racing thoughts and simply drift into a much-needed sleep. The hours vanish inside the carriage, slipping away before he even realizes it. Larusha takes her shift, cradling Kyle's head as they roll ever closer to the front lines. Larusha prods him to compare her touch against the others in his circle. Kyle deflects the question instantly, refusing to engage with the trap she is setting. He stares blankly at the carriage ceiling, determined to ignore the heavy air between them. Larusha pushes for a reaction, but Kyle abruptly ends the conversation to escape her gaze. The carriage carries them into the forest near Count Ryotan's territory, sinking deeper into the encroaching shadows. A lone scout slips through the dark thicket, completely unaware he has already been marked. Without warning, an S-rank ogre erupts from the brush to pin him in a lethal ambush. The party arrives at the dense, shadowed woods that mark the edge of Count Ryotan's territory. A hulking, double-headed ogre blocks their path, snapping its jagged teeth in the dim light. Kyle and his companions watch in stunned silence as the Count unleashes an explosive assault. The Count slams his fist into the creature, but the beast doesn't even budge from the blow. Heavy exhaustion weighs on the Count as he reveals he has been battling since yesterday. Kyle watches the display, struggling to grasp the reality of this relentless, ongoing fight. Gritting his teeth, the Count swears he will stand his ground regardless of the cost. Kyle shouts a desperate warning that the ogre is completely immune to physical damage. Ignoring the danger, the Count channels his resolve into one last, devastating strike. The ogre towers over the clearing, entirely unmoved by the Count's frantic, crushing barrage. Kyle steps in to remind the weary Count that these monsters possess a natural immunity to brute force. The group pulls back into the tree line to regroup and formulate a new plan. Count Ryoton admits he charged in to test his limits and ensure his people's safety. Kyle finally pieces together why those powerful strikes failed to leave a single mark. The Count chuckles, admitting he nearly doubted his own legendary strength during the skirmish. He remains fixated on the idea that overcoming this resistance is the key to true power. Kyle turns his gaze to the forest and counts 5 more ogres waiting in the shadows. He senses an unnatural stillness radiating from the creatures hidden in the dark. The ogres watch the party with a chilling refusal to engage. Kyle notes the way they remain perfectly motionless, devoid of any individual intent. His eyes drift to the dark, intricate crests branded onto their foreheads. The marks confirm these monsters are mere puppets serving the Demon Lord's army. Count Ryoton turns to Kyle, goading him to reveal his true combat capabilities. A memory of his former doctor surfaces, recalling the man's suspicion toward his status screen. The display shows a magic attack stat that completely shatters every known limit. The doctor urges Kyle to wield this hidden strength, even without any magical training. Kyle hesitates, wary of tapping into a power he has long left untouched. He squares his shoulders and steps forward, ready to confront the shadows. Kyle summons his ancient, long-forgotten magic as the monsters loom before him. He raises a hand and channels his dormant energy into a sharp, singular command. The towering ogres wait in the darkness, braced for the coming strike. Kyle anchors his stance and pushes a massive surge of power through his arm. He locks his gaze forward, unleashing the latent energy stored deep within his status screen. A colossal wave of fire erupts from his palm, incinerating the forest path. The party watches the massive inferno, frozen by the sheer scale of the output. Kyle confesses that his status screen remains entirely broken, regardless of his own influence. The group stares at him, desperate to understand the origin of such overwhelming heat. Kyle offers a sheepish apology as the others grumble about his skill at hogging all the action. Count Ryoton brushes the display aside, steadfast in his belief that raw strength always wins. The guild receptionist confirms that their recent efforts have earned them a prestigious promotion. She notes that the group handled an irregular request with surprising expertise and efficiency. With their record now verified, the guild officially elevates the party to A-rank standing. The team cheers for their new rank, though they privately suspect a stroke of luck played a part. Kyle proposes a lavish feast to celebrate, specifically setting his sights on foie gras and truffles. The girls recoil at his request, urging him to stop acting like such a cheapskate at the guild hall. The receptionist maintains that the guild's current menu offers excellent quality at a fair price. Kyle sheepishly settles for the local fare while Yui prepares to feast on everything in sight. The table overflows with steaming dishes as the party prepares to dig in with gusto. The girls clasp their hands in gratitude, eager to dive into the mountain of food before them. Kyle watches his companions devour the meal while the kitchen staff scrambles to keep up. He finds it strange that official channels remain completely silent regarding the Demon Lord's army. Kyle suggests they look into the matter themselves, though he doubts they will find much. His companions ignore the heavy topic, turning their full attention back to the banquet. Kyle chuckles to himself, struck by how easily his friends cast aside their worries for a good meal. He chooses to let the serious talk rest and fully enjoy the feast with his team. A sudden chime from the guild's communication device cuts their lunch break short. The receptionist receives the urgent alert and turns her gaze directly toward Kyle's table. She steps toward Kyle, offering a quick apology for cutting his break short with a desperate mission. Demons are currently ravaging Baron Aldo's village, and Kyle is their only hope for survival. Rain lashes against the carriage as the party wonders how much longer the journey will take. The grim 4-hour estimate weighs heavily on them, mocking their frantic search for speed. Despite the magical enhancement flowing through the horses, the storm turns every mile into a grueling fight. Kyle watches the downpour, keenly aware that every tick of the clock costs lives back at the village. He breaks the silence, frustrated by their forced inaction while innocent people perish. The carriage wheels struggle through the thick mud, and the team senses their window of opportunity closing. A heavy object slams through the deluge, jolting the carriage to an abrupt and violent stop. They peer through the rain to see a monster blocking the road, its body twisted into a grotesque shape. 3 hellish steeds emerge from the mist, their skin branded by a dark and pulsating demonic crest. Kyle identifies the mark and warns his team that these beasts are hunting with lethal intent. He commands the driver to halt, deciding he must reach the village on foot. The demonic horses shriek, thrashing as the dark energy consumes their very forms. Kyle gathers his mana, steadying himself to strike down the creatures barring their way. His companions take their positions while the beasts circle them under the relentless rain. Kyle manifests a swirling sphere of dark energy, locking his gaze onto the lead monster. Abandoning all caution, he lunges forward to carve a path through the tempest. The party moves cautiously through the woods, hindered by the countless barriers blocking their route. Finally, the faint silhouette of Lilith Village emerges from the thick, gray mist. Below them, Lilith Village lies in ruins, a skeleton of splintered timber and debris. Kyle and his companions navigate the wreckage, desperately searching for signs of life. The party scans the desolate landscape, yet the demon attackers have vanished without a trace. They suspect the enemy has already abandoned the village to its destruction. Kyle studies the shattered clock tower, wondering what drove such a brutal assault. As rain lashes against the remnants of the village, the group pauses to consider their next move. Kyle determines that finding the village chief is their only hope of understanding this tragedy. They make their way toward the chief's home, the solitary structure still intact amidst the chaos. The door creaks open under Kyle's hand, revealing a young woman waiting in the gloom. Irie, the chief's daughter, watches them with a piercing gaze that feels dangerously sharp. Seeking refuge from the downpour, the team steps inside the chief's house. Irie recounts how her father once led this now broken village through years of peace. She sets down a steaming cup of tea, her voice trembling as she describes her father's violent end. Stepping into the dim light, she confirms her identity as the sole survivor of the chief's household. Kyle traces his fingers over dark, mysterious stains on the wall, uneasy about their origin. Irie identifies the relic hanging nearby as her father's antique hunting rifle. She reflects on the days she spent shadowing her father on his frequent hunts through these woods. Turning toward the mantel, she gestures to a collection of family photographs resting against the stone. The group leans in, recognizing a young Irie standing proudly beside her father in the frames. Without warning, the villagers emerge from the shadows, their eyes narrowing with cold, calculated suspicion. Irie signals the survivors to huddle close within the safety of the remaining homes. The villagers identify them instantly as the guild adventurers sent from the capital. The party confirms their mission and immediately turns to the whereabouts of the demon. The villagers look down, confessing they only escaped by fleeing the sudden, chaotic violence. One survivor describes catching a fleeting glimpse of the monster vanishing by the clock tower. The adventurers trade uneasy looks, baffled that their quarry could simply vanish into thin air. Kyle demands answers, noting that Irie collapsed right at the base of that exact structure. Irie stands motionless, her eyes drifting toward a haunting memory of the tower looming overhead. Her companions crowd around, calling her name as she drifts into a sudden, vacant trance. Irie remains unreachable while her mind retreats into the shadows of the tower's hidden history. The party gathers tightly around her, their faces tightening with worry as they check for a pulse. Irie bows her head, softly admitting that the memories she needs are locked away. She expresses guilt over her perceived uselessness, leaving the others at a loss for words. A teammate steps forward to insist on her value, hoping to pull her back from the edge. The villagers chime in, commending Irie for bravely stepping up to lead in her father's place. The man blames himself for his own shortcomings, leaving his wife confused by his sudden outburst. The party urges Irie to show herself compassion while bearing such a heavy load. The adventurers watch her closely, witnessing the immense weight of the tragedy she has endured. She continues to press forward despite the crushing grief of losing her father. Irie squares her shoulders amidst the ruins, facing what comes next with a quiet, steady resolve. The party realizes the demon might have slipped away using advanced teleportation magic. Kyle reasons that any magical departure should leave behind detectable traces in the area. He guides the group toward the shattered clock tower to begin their search. They huddle together in the rain, waiting for Kyle to reveal what really happened. Elisa moves ahead, meticulously combing through the wreckage for lingering magical signatures. The ruined clock tower looms in the downpour, guarding the secret of the demon's flight. Elisa shuts her eyes and stretches her senses, hunting for the faintest shimmer of magic. She exhales in frustration, confirming that the atmosphere is completely barren of any arcane energy. A chilling realization stops the group in their tracks. Teleportation is not responsible for the demon's disappearance. Kyle weighs the possibilities, wondering if the trail was expertly wiped or if something much darker occurred. A mysterious figure emerges from the rain, claiming that magic had nothing to do with it. The stranger draws near with an unnatural grin that instantly puts the group on edge. He introduces himself with a cheerful flourish as Alma, the self-appointed tour guide of Lilith Village. Alma greets them with theatrical energy, behaving as though their arrival was long anticipated. He calls out Kyle by name, instantly stripping away the group's carefully maintained anonymity. Kyle demands an explanation for how a complete stranger could recognize him so easily. Alma waves the question aside, casually dismissing Kyle's reputation as simple common knowledge. The guide shifts his focus to the women, offering crude and unwanted remarks about their appearance. The party reaches for their weapons, debating whether to strike down this unsettling man right where he stands. Alma skips toward the clock tower ruins, gesturing for them to follow him into the unknown. The mysterious guide looms over the party, exposing their secret agenda with a single glance. Kyle stiffens as an unmistakable tension ripples through his entire group. His voice cuts through the downpour, demanding the truth from their unsettling companion. Alma flashes a wide, eerie grin, claiming he alone holds the secrets they are hunting. Kyle presses for the demon's location, his patience fraying with every passing second. Alma dismisses the urgency, insisting they linger in this strange, quiet village. The guide offers a grand tour of Lilith Village, leaving Kyle completely bewildered by his erratic behavior. He gestures with theatrical flair, reminding the party of his self-appointed role as their guide. Kyle stares at the man, struggling to reconcile this bizarre tour with their grim mission. Alma dances among the ruins while the group considers silencing him with a blade. He raises a finger, cutting off their questions about the demon attack with a cryptic promise. He points toward the looming clock tower, declaring the ancient structure holds the power to freeze time itself. Kyle and his party stand frozen, struggling to process the weight of such an impossible claim. They whisper amongst themselves, recalling how scholars have always dismissed time manipulation as mere fantasy. Alma rests a hand against the cold stone, admitting he knows nothing of the tower's origin. He traces the weathered surface, confessing he understands neither its purpose nor its creator. Yet the tower remains a silent witness, marking the passage of every life in the village. Alma speaks of a craftsman's first carving, a small, proud relic of a long-forgotten life. He describes an old farmer watching the rain-swept sky, offering a quiet prayer of gratitude. The tower captures the final, weary sigh of a traveler who has finally reached home. Alma recalls the quiet remains of Lilith Village, where two souls once pledged their futures. He speaks of children erupting in pure joy the moment they witnessed their first snowfall. Alma describes these memories settling around the tower like layers of drifting gold dust. Kyle weighs the grim possibility of demons hunting this technology for their own destructive ends. The guide mourns the senseless loss of these lives and wonders where their final judgment lies. Kyle struggles to believe that a clock tower capable of halting time could ever be destroyed. He questions how anyone could shatter such profound memories and hope for any measure of peace. Alma pivots with a vacant expression, abruptly severing the weight of their conversation. The party watches him in silence, bracing for the meaning behind his lingering riddle. Alma gestures toward the ruins, challenging them to find the demon that laid the tower to waste. The group falls quiet as a new plan forms around the doctor's peculiar medical expertise. Kyle and his companions recoil at the suggestion, branding the doctor a common charlatan. Irie demands to know how the doctor could possibly track their foe with such limited skills. Irie shocks the group by revealing he has walked these village streets once before. A heavy tension hangs over the party as the rain continues to fall around the mysterious doctor. Irie breaks the silence to ask if anyone carries a device for magical communication. A rotary phone rests on the desk, instantly grabbing the attention of the gathered adventurers. This arcane tool bridges vast distances by channeling mana through its mechanical dialing system. Kyle retrieves the contact number from the doctor, grateful he held onto the scrap of paper. The line clicks open, and a voice from the Rapier Kingdom Hospital answers the call. A familiar voice crackles to life, greeting Kyle with a long-awaited recognition. Kyle demands answers, but the voice on the other end deflects with chilling composure. The voice confirms they are hiding in Lilith Village, finally pinning down the trail. Kyle tightens his grip on the receiver as the voice notes their target is lurking nearby. A sudden silence fills the room, leaving Kyle barking at a deadline. Kyle turns around to find his companions have vanished without leaving a single trace. Elisa emerges like a ghost, startling the weary adventurer with her sudden appearance. Kyle checks on Irie, relieved to find his ally still standing amid the growing unease. Elisa moves with haunting grace, sweeping past Kyle as if pulled by an unseen force. Irie peers into the darkness and whispers that he has finally caught a glimpse of them. The two women remain unconscious on the couch, bearing the scars of a brutal fight. They stir in their sleep, murmuring a warning to Kyle as the shadows lengthen. Kyle freezes, the weight of their ominous words forcing him to reconsider his next move. Elisa stares back with lethal intensity, turning the path ahead into a gauntlet of death. Kyle scans the room, desperate to find the companions who vanished into thin air. Elisa appears right behind him, her presence slicing through the oppressive silence. Kyle demands to know where the others have gone, but Irie offers only a cryptic response. He pivots toward the couch where their comrades lie, still and unresponsive in the gloom. Yui and Elisa remain in a deep, troubled slumber, their faces etched with signs of struggle. The wall erupts in a shower of debris as the entire structure begins to collapse. Kyle anchors himself in the debris, waiting for the inevitable strike. A disembodied voice from the shadows demands he cut Irie down. The ultimatum hangs in the air, forcing a desperate decision upon him. A piercing horn shatters the silence, exposing the monstrous truth of his companion. Kyle shouts through the falling ceiling, asking if a demon has hijacked Irie's soul. Irie argues that this is far beyond simple possession, describing a much darker evolution. She begs Kyle to pin the rampaging girl while she gathers her thoughts to explain. Irie grips her skull, shrieking as forbidden power surges through her nervous system. Kyle watches helplessly as the girl he trusts fights a malevolent force tearing her apart. Irie collapses into the dark, her body twisting violently under the strain of a new awakening. Kyle charges, but her sudden, unnatural density stops his blade mid-swing. She conjures spheres of pure annihilation, laughing as the volatile energy threatens to swallow the room. Kyle locks limbs with her, fighting to contain the raw magic leaking from her skin. The crushing weight of her power forces Kyle to realize he is facing something far beyond a demon. A massive, jagged claw rips through the air, missing Kyle's throat by a hair's breadth. Kyle resets his footing, steeling himself for the inevitable retaliation. Her eyes cut through the gloom, revealing a consciousness splintering under the pressure. She begs him to stop, her voice vibrating with the struggle to hold back the entity. Kyle tries to hold her down, but she has become an immovable, hardened shell. The air itself warps as she releases spheres of destruction, her laughter echoing into the void. Kyle battles to suppress the volatile magic erupting from her core. The crushing weight of her energy proves to Kyle that this is no ordinary demon. Whispers from the shadows feed the accusations, tearing her mind apart. She collapses, screaming her innocence as the reality around them dissolves. Irie hurls a rifle across the gap, shouting for Kyle to take the shot. Kyle catches the weapon, doubting if a mere firearm can stop such a monster. The creature lunges, forcing Kyle to raise the barrel in a desperate block. Steel grinds against claw, showering sparks as the force of the blow slams him back. A distant clock tower tolls, its sound vibrating through the chaos of their fight. The clock face looms over the ruins, signaling a dark shift in their reality. She lifts the weapon with trembling hands, the weight of a buried history resurfacing. A violent strike sends shockwaves through the air, shattering the earth beneath them. Kyle holds his ground, watching as she finally breaks under the mounting pressure. She shatters the silence, confessing that the identity of Irie is a hollow lie. Alma locks eyes with Kyle in the downpour, her voice cutting through the deluge. She recounts the moment she destroyed the village clock tower and lost herself. A flood of raw human emotion washes over her, burying her demon side deep beneath. She admits her memories of past atrocities vanished, leaving only a hollow shell. Kyle listens as the weight of her fractured existence settles over the battlefield. She shattered time with godlike power, and now a cruel fate demands payment. Kyle watches the girl who murdered her own kin, struggling to process the impossible scene. The truth cuts deep as it becomes clear her mind has been irrevocably shattered by a curse. Ghostly figures crawl from the darkness, clawing at her as her trauma manifests in the physical world. She crumples to the ground as the reality of her own identity finally breaks through the haze. A young child stands solitary against the creeping abyss, clutching her father's rifle in defiance. The heavy scent of regret hangs over the field, a grim reminder of a survival she never attained. She sobs while recounting the crushing burden of a life spent in constant, agonizing torment. Kyle demands the truth from Irie regarding the mysterious collapse of the ancient clock tower. Irie dismisses any mention of the demon lord, insisting that every atrocity was her own design. Disbelief washes over Kyle when Irie confesses that Volgon plans to execute the demon lord as well. She gestures to the artifact pulsing inside her chest, a beacon designed to track the rogue. Kyle takes the stone, accepting the heavy burden of hunting the man who threatens all of reality. Volgon stirs a vial of dark magic, preparing to rewrite the history of every living soul. The shadow of a true monster stretches across the land, signaling the final clash in the dark. Irie stands beneath the pouring rain, fixated on her mission to bring down the Demon Lord. She displays a dormant energy flickering in her palm, powerful enough to reshape the world itself. Kyle locks eyes with the woman, finally confirming her identity as the elusive Irie. Irie tilts her head against the falling rain, asking Kyle for a favor that clearly haunts her. Villagers crowd into the storm, their fingers pointed in accusation as they debate who this girl truly is. A man pushes through the throng, branding Irie a killer for the lives she stole from his family. A sea of angry villagers bays for blood, demanding the adventurer execute Irie on the spot. Irie mourns the vibrant family she once cherished, now buried under nothing but rubble. She breathes a soft apology while her eyes dim, surrendering to the crushing weight of her own guilt. Visions of her victims flicker in her mind, driving her toward a breaking point. Irie falls to her knees in the rain, shattered by the spectral echoes of her past crimes. Her father's face flashes in her memory, a man she failed to keep safe. She reaches toward him, but her hands grasp only the cold, empty shell of his body. Reality buckles as Irie clutches her head, drowning in the cacophony of the voices calling to her. Kyle watches in stunned silence as Irie turns away from the crowd and the world itself. Her human facade slips, exposing a predatory grin that freezes the villagers in their tracks. She weaves a vortex of hungry shadows, poised to extinguish everyone standing in her path. Kyle surges forward, only for a violent shockwave to blast him deep into the ruins. Irie rips through the barrier, vanishing into the darkness to track down Yui and Elisa. Kyle realizes her true objective, but the gap between them has already grown too wide. Irie crashes through the glass, hellbent on finishing this cycle of bloodshed tonight. The room plunges into darkness as she tears through the final remnants of her past. A photograph skids across the floor, preserving a moment of peace that has long since vanished. The picture shows a father and daughter standing together before their world turned to ash. She recalls the forest where they rested, a memory now stained by the blood on her own hands. Kyle stands alone in the wreckage, watching his former ally dissolve into the shadows. Rain batters the stone walls, drowning out his ragged, heavy breaths. Morning light creeps through the window to reveal a harsh and broken world. He lays out the brutal truth for Yui and Elisa, sparing them none of the carnage. Their tears fall freely as the reality of Irie's transformation finally shatters their composure. The village remains a broken shell, and despite Baron Aldo's supplies, the road to recovery is long. Alma radiates an unwavering hope, vowing to guide them all through this suffocating darkness. Her infectious spirit serves as the only defense they have against their grim surroundings. Alma praises Kyle's courage, cementing his role as the group's steadfast protector. Kyle lowers his head, burdened by the dark path he must carve to live up to that name. The two young women stand prepared, their hidden potential ready to be tempered in the fires of battle. Alma offers a bright, final goodbye as the village begins its slow struggle to rebuild. 10 days pass before the team reaches the crowded, vibrant streets of the Rapier Kingdom's capital. Daily life carries on as if nothing has changed, yet their unfinished mission casts a long, chilling shadow. They track Volgon, but the doctor's instincts fail to cut through the trail's strange, elusive nature. The doctor cuts in, insisting Kyle redirect his focus toward the urgent task remaining. He grumbles about being cast aside while the others narrowly survived the village massacre. A rotary phone sits motionless on the desk, the line cut dead after their brief conversation. Kyle fumbles through a desperate explanation while the doctor harps on the fragility of his patients. The team steps into the massive, echoing heart of the Rapier Kingdom's royal court. King Greyford watches from his throne, his gaze as cold and calculating as the kingdom he rules. The group stands before the monarch to address the growing threat of the former Demon Lord's executive. King Greyford confesses that his own intelligence network has hit a dead end with this target. He notes the suspect lacks any record of achievements, appearing entirely unremarkable. The party weighs the unsettling possibility that their adversary is hiding in plain sight. A mysterious girl questions the true motives of a demon seeking to dominate the world. The team remains baffled by the complete lack of information on such a powerful new foe. The king breaks the silence by directing his subjects toward the mysterious Enero grasslands. A hidden cave near those grasslands serves as a breeding ground for dangerous marked monsters. The party realizes Volgon is likely utilizing that cave as his secret base of operations. King Greyford places the heavy burden of the kingdom's survival directly onto Kyle. Kyle accepts the daunting charge to save the world from this looming demonic threat. A masked woman disrupts the tense briefing with an abrupt and unexpected arrival. She corners a flustered Kyle, showering him with bold praise for his rugged looks. The stranger leans in close, leaving a paralyzed Kyle completely speechless. She presses into his space, demanding that he validate her sudden and intense advances. King Greyford redirects his focus to the mission as the woman laughs off the mounting tension. Kyle rallies his party for the journey ahead, unaware that a shadowed threat watches his every move.